Anatomy Assignment 3 by Chris Tottle. Lobes. The lobe's function is to collect air from the secondary bronchus. The structure of the lobes are all separate, so if one lobe was to break down or become infected, then the other lobes could carry on working regardless. As well as that, each lobe has its own oxygen and blood supply, as well as its own nerves. This also means that they can carry on individually if one was to break down. There are 10 lobes on the right side of the lung and 8 lobes on the left. Each of these lobes are connected by tissue walls to hold them together. Pleural membrane. The function of pleural membrane is to help to keep two lungs away from each other and airtight. Therefore, if you have an accident and one lung gets punctured, then the other will still work to keep you alive. The structure of the pleural membrane means that each lung is placed within a separate layer of membrane. Therefore, there are two sacs for them to stay in. As you can see in the diagram, there are three main sections: visceral pleura, parochial pleura, and pleural space. In the pleural space, there is a lubricant to stop friction between the layers. Thoracic cavity. The function of thoracic cavity is to protect vital organs, such as the heart and lungs. As well as that, the thoracic cavity helps when breathing because it expands and relaxes. The structure of thoracic cavity starts in your chest region and starting on your clavicles, going down to your diaphragm. Visceral pleura. The function of visceral pleura is that it is one of the two pleurals that line the interior of your lungs. The structure of visceral pleura is that there is a fluid that lubricates both the membranes and allows them to slide against each other during respiration. As you can see in the diagram, your diaphragm sits below your lungs and goes down to increase the thoracic cavity, whereas your visceral pleural is the inner layer, your pleural cavity and chest wall are the outer layers, and your parochial pleura is in between the layers. Pleural fluid. The structure of pleural fluid is that it has a fluid found between layers of pleural which contains small serous fluid that helps lubricate the lungs during breathing. Pleural fluid's function is that it reduces friction on the lungs during breathing and therefore reduces the wear over time. Internal and external intercostal muscles. The internal and external intercostal muscles are found in between the ribs. The internal muscles extend from your front of the ribs and go round the back past the bend in your ribs. The external muscles wrap around the back of your ribs almost to the end of the bony part in front of your ribs. During breathing out, external muscles contract and the internal muscles relax together as well as the thorax. This is my first purpose game video on heart structure. This is my second purpose game video on the respiratory system. The route of an oxygen molecule. The oxygen molecule enters in through your mouth and nasal cavity. It then travels down your trachea into the lungs. It brushes against the cilia, getting rid of any bacteria or dust, and then goes through your bronchus into your bronchioles, and then into the alveoli, your little air sacs. In your gaseous exchange takes place within the capillary walls, and then the oxygen molecule goes into the bloodstream. It is carried along by the red blood cells, and when it connects with the red blood cells, it transforms into oxygenated blood, and then goes through the pulmonary artery and is pumped around the body. And on the way to the working muscles, it mixes with glucose and water, which turn into energy, and it is then turns into carbon dioxide and escapes as the person breathes out. To do this, it travels through the bloodstream and back to the heart, through the lungs, alveoli, bronchus, bronchioles, and trachea, and finally back out through the nose. Arterioles. The function of an arteriole is to carry blood away from the heart and to the rest of the body, and they are also very good for maintaining blood pressure. The structure of an arteriole are that they are strong but have thinner walls because of the lower pressure, and as you can see, like, there's smooth bands of muscle going around the outside of the tissue. Capillaries. The main function of a capillary is to carry oxygen and other nutrients through the blood to the tissues of the body and the working muscles. The structure of a capillary is that they are very small and narrow and very thin, like 1 cell thick. Because they are 1 cell thick, it means that the products it carries just pass through them, which is called diffusion. Also, each capillary is part of a capillary network, which means that all the capillaries join together to allow gases exchange to take place. Because of the network, it increases the number of capillaries in that area, and they can therefore get more oxygen and blood to the working muscles in one go. The reason they have the thinner walls is because the pressure is lower than arteries, but the pressure is also higher than veins. And veins. The function of a vein are to return the deoxygenated blood back to the heart so that it can be pumped around the body again. The structure is that they have very thin walls because it's under lower pressure, and the reason it is under lower pressure is because their walls are of a large diameter. Also, they have a thin layer of muscle and elastic fibres, and the main structure is that veins have a one-way valve to keep the blood moving in one direction and to prevent the backflow. Venules. The venules are one type of blood vessel that transport blood around the body. As well as that, they drain the blood from the capillaries into the veins so that the blood goes back to the heart and starts the cycle again. The structure of a venule is that the walls are made up of 3 layers, an inner layer of endothelium, a middle layer of muscle and elastic tissue, and an outer layer of fibrous connective tissue, which you can see in the diagram as different names of tunica internal, tunicle media, and tunica external. Arteries. The function of this type of blood vessel is to transport deoxygenated blood away from the heart, except the pulmonary artery, which transports oxygenated blood. The artery is also called an elastic blood vessel. The structure of an artery has smooth muscles to stop friction and therefore increases the speed of blood flow. The artery is the largest type of blood vessel, and as well as that, they also have thick muscular walls to cope with the high speed and pressure that the blood passes through at. The other reason that they have thick walls is because they are situated so deep within the body, but due to the pressure you can still feel the pulse. Here's a picture of an artery showing the different layers as you go in. Gases exchange. Gases exchange means the passing of oxygen from alveoli into the blood flow and the carbon dioxide, which is the waste products, that is in the blood flow, which passes back into the alveoli to be breathed out when the person exhales. Inspiration. To be able to draw air into our lungs through your mouth and nasal cavity, the volume of our chest or thoracic cavity must increase. To do this, our diaphragm contracts and the rib cage moves up and out. As the diaphragm contracts, it flattens to increase the space, and this decrease in air pressure within our lungs causes air to rush in from the outside. Expiration is the opposite of inspiration, because at the end of each breath, the intercostal muscles and diaphragm relax and return to their normal position, which decreases the size of your thoracic cavity. This decreased space and increased air pressure in the lungs forces the air out. Tidal volume. Your tidal volume increases because when you're exercising, you're breathing at a faster rate, and therefore your muscles are using the oxygen quicker. This is why we need more oxygen to do this. Our body increases the tidal volume to allow more oxygen to get to the working muscles so they can carry on to perform. Vital capacity. Vital capacity means the most air that you can exhale after taking the deepest breath you can. It can be up to 10 times more than you would normally exhale. If you're a top athlete, your vital capacity would be increased as you could be more efficient with your breathing and would therefore be able to get rid of the more waste products in one breath. Residual volume. The amount of air that remains in your lungs after you have exhaled fully. There is also a small amount of air that stays in your lungs to keep them inflated. Obviously, again, if you're a top performer, then your residual volume would be less because you would be more efficient with the oxygen that you breathe in, and you would be able to exhale more. This means that you can deposit more waste products at one time. Neural control breathing. There are three different parts of neural control. The first part is that brainstem controls your breathing rate. Secondly, mechanoreceptors detect changes in muscle contraction force. As well as that, within neural control, there are also stretch receptors which detect changes within the lung structure. Also, neural control is an unconscious process, but it can be changed voluntarily by, for example, breathing deeper or slowing down your breathing. During exercise, neural control would kick in to ensure that the oxygen, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen ions in our blood are healthy. Because of this, we have higher oxygen and lower carbon dioxide, and in the end, hydrogen will become a waste product. Chemical control breathing. Firstly, carbon dioxide is released by the muscles after they've used the oxygenated blood. The carbon dioxide is detected in the blood by chemoreceptors, and then the chemoreceptors respond by telling the brain to get rid of this carbon dioxide. Then carbon dioxide would go back through the veins to the heart and would then be breathed out. Delivery of oxygen and nutrients. The delivery of oxygen and nutrients happens because this oxygen and nutrients would travel through the bloodstream to the working muscles to mean that they could work at a higher intensity for a longer period of time. Removal of waste products. Waste products diffuse into the blood cells and are carried away back to the lungs, where gases exchange would take place, and then you would breathe those waste products out. It is important to get rid of waste products because they would, most importantly, they would get in the way and could become infected, and therefore, you know what I mean. Thermoregulation, vasoconstriction, and vasodilation. Vasoconstriction happens when the body is too cold. To stop this, the blood vessels leading to the skin capillaries become narrower to let less blood flow to the skin, and therefore keeping the heat within your body. On the other hand, vasodilation happens when the body is too hot. To stop the body from being too hot, the blood vessels leading to the skin capillaries become wider and dilate to therefore allow more blood flow through the skin, and more heat can be lost to cool you down. Functions of blood. There are three main functions of blood. The first one would be oxygen transport. The blood carries oxygen and other nutrients to the working muscles to supply them with oxygen so that they can work at a higher intensity for a longer period of time. Clotting. When you have a cut, your body and it bleeds, you will continue to bleed until the blood clots. This is because the platelets in your blood will come to the surface of the skin and join together to cause a scab. This is why they would stop bleeding. They would cause a scab so the wound can repair itself under this clot. Fighting infection. This is the third main function of the blood. It does this because the white blood cells in your bloodstream fight the infection. They would do this by surrounding the bacteria and then destroying it by eating it away at it. How blood transports around the body. The blood flow starts from your heart because the heart pumps the blood through the arteries. It starts with your aorta. Once the blood passes through the aorta, it goes down to the arterioles. After that, the blood is transported to the working muscles and is collected by the capillaries. Finally, the blood is collected by the capillaries and taken to the veins and back to the heart to start the cycle again. This is my bibliography to show the resources that I used. Thank you very much.